Hi, this is Congressman Andy Biggs, and you're listening to the Sara Carter Podcast.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he is out. He is out of the presidential race for the Democratic nomination. He's like, I'm getting out. I'm getting out before Super Tuesday. And everyone wants to know why, right? I mean, it was kind of a surprise. He jumped right out of that race when we know that Joe Biden had a big jump, and that was part of his decision. He also made some statements saying that, you know, he's doing this.
Whoa. Time out, folks. We can't do anything else before we get to the huge news.
What
of
happened?
The day.
Did something happen with Buttigieg?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are at 1 million followers!
Whoa! I had no idea you were going to do that.
I told you we were going to party when we got
there.
1 million followers.
That's right.
On Twitter.
Okay, 1 million. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me 1 million followers out there. I'm really excited. We're happy to bring the news, entertainment, and the Sara Carter Show podcast to everyone out there who's listening.
Hey, I mean, that's a big
thanks,
deal.
Adam. It is a big deal. I'm actually my cheeks are red. I'm a little embarrassed.
You should be proud.
Thanks.
I mean, we work really hard at the show, and to our YouTube followers out there, be ready
growing.
Because next show.
Oh, we got a new studio. We are so excited. We have this great new studio. So for everyone out there who watches us on YouTube, you are going to love it. It's going to be so much fun. We're going to have so many in-studio guests, and I think they're going to be quite surprised at the studio that we have for you this coming week. So just check us out at YouTube. And I'm excited. Please rate us on your app, on your favorite app. You listen to us on Apple, if you listen to us on Spotify, whatever you listen to, go on, rate us. Let me know what you think, and let me know what stories you want to hear about right here at the Sara Carter Show. So, okay, now that we're done celebrating, I'm sure Pete Buttigieg is not celebrating, Adam. He is not celebrating. Or who knows? Maybe he is.
We'll celebrate for him.
Right, we could celebrate for him. Maybe he cut a deal. And that's what I'm thinking. I mean, I don't know that. I'm just throwing out some ideas here. You know, former Vice President Joe Biden, he is trying to make his move. I mean, even with all of his gaffes. And by the way, he had a doozy. I got to play this one for you. This is a great gaffe. This is one of the other Biden's famous gaffe moments. And I can't believe that he's even still in the race with everything that he said. And I guess the mainstream media really isn't going after him the way they would have gone after President Donald Trump if he would have made these mistakes. But let's listen to the latest gaffe, and this was on Chris Wallace's show.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. Thanks for your time. Please come back in less than 13 years, sir.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
Chuck?
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
Chris. I just did Chris. No, I just did Chuck. I tell you what, man, these are back-to-back. Anyway.
No, it's
I don't
okay.
know how you do it early in the morning, too.
Safe travels on the campaign trail. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I don't even know what to think. Chuck, Chris, he doesn't want to get up in the morning. Seriously, he's running for the office of the presidency of the United States of America. You got to.
I want to play this one more time for the listeners, and I want you to really focus in on the last 3 seconds, because what happens in this 30-second clip, which has me and myself, Jenny, and all of us in the studio dying, how defeated does he sound when he just knows? It's almost like he realizes in this 3 seconds, oh, God, this is going to go viral.
Mr. Vice President,
thank you.
Thanks for your time. Please come back in less than 13 years, sir.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
Chris. I just did Chris. No, I just did Chuck. I tell you what, man, these are back-to-back. Anyway.
No, it's
I don't
okay.
know how you do it early in the morning, too.
Safe travels on the campaign trail. Thank you, sir.
Wow.
Thank
He
you.
felt the defeat. He felt it. He knew it was coming. He's just going to own it. He's going to take it and own it. And hopefully nobody will write about it or remember it by the end of this next week, because he'll have another new gaffe to share with us. And that one will be in the history books, right? We won't even be paying attention to that one anymore. But it's been crazy. I mean, if you're watching this, you know, we have Super Tuesday. What's going to happen? Pete Buttigieg drops out. And in a way, a lot of people are saying is they're doing this. The Democrats are doing this because they are going to once again, try to steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders. So I want you to think about this. Bernie Sanders and his supporters are out there like crazy support, right, for this socialist Bernie, right? He's got a lot of young people backing him. They don't know anything about socialism. They don't understand communism. They have no concept of what it's like to live in a nation like that. I can tell you personally, my mom fled Cuba in the 1960s. It is the reason why she came to America was to get away from Fidel Castro and his communist rule over Cuba. And it was a horrific experience for my family at the time, having to leave the island, having to leave everything they knew behind, but coming to such an amazing nation and America opening their arms, people sponsoring my family in the late 1960s. They came in on the Johnson Freedom flights. I would hear stories about what it was like under Fidel Castro. And believe me, no young American would want to live under those conditions. And when you think about the former Soviet Republic and you think about communist nations and dictatorships, there is nothing good about this. And even with socialism, nothing's free, folks. Nothing is free. Everything costs money. So when Bernie lies to you and tells you that, he's going to take care of all of your college debt, remember it comes with a huge cost. There's just no way he can do that unless they're taking the money from somewhere. But besides all of that, Bernie has support. And right now what we're seeing is the Democrats come in and they are trying to pull the rug out from under Bernie once again. And it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good at all. Why? Because you know what's going to happen with Bernie supporters? They're going to do what they did in 2016. They're either not going to go to the polls, they're not going to vote, or they're going to vote for President Trump. So either way, what the Democrats are doing is going to backfire on them. It's not going to work. I was just looking at this website where they're doing projections. It's almost like a, Las Vegas, kind of gambling, like who's going to win Super Tuesday. And right now, I'm on 538.com. It's projects.538.com. And it's actually showing that Sanders is in the lead right now. This is appears to have a lot of people voting here at 20.3% with average delegates around 1,600. We have Biden in at 14.6. Oh gosh, Mike Bloomberg, Mini Mike. I don't want to say that, but I did. Mini Mike at 0.2%. With 595 delegates, unless he can buy them. And we know that he's going to work very diligently to buy his delegates.
I mean, how many radio ads can you buy, dude?
I know. Well, and the fact that he did a radio ad, right?
Every single show.
Every single show. And even during the debate. Like, how do you do that? You buy an ad for yourself during a debate.
$500 million he spent so far?
Oh, $500 million. Yeah, he's got money. He's got money to spare.
But what's his platform? Like, what is he running on other than I'm not Trump?
Well, look, he sees himself as more of a moderate Democrat. He's hoping that will sell. He doesn't see himself as goofy and gaffy as Joe Biden. He definitely is not to the left at all the way that we see Bernie Sanders. He doesn't see himself as a socialist. He wants to try to tell the Democrats, look, you're going to run a rally around me, even if I'm not your favorite, because I'm the one that's most electable, and especially with the independents. That's just not going to work right now because he doesn't have the charisma. He does not have the charisma to bring in those voters. He does not have it. And so the Democrats right now are stuck because the Democrats wasted, by the way, nearly 4 years of what they could have been doing for the American people. They wasted it by going after President Trump. They spent time on the Russia hoax, on impeachment. They didn't care about their constituents. All they cared about, and all they do care about, is trying to find a way to get rid of President Trump. And guess what? The American people are sick and tired of it. Even the Democrats are sick and tired of it. And I think that's why you're seeing so much support for Bernie, because Bernie is kind of like this kind of anomaly, this socialist. I want to make changes. I want to do what the people want. I'm for the people. But really, he's not like President Trump. He's not a populist the way people think of President Trump. He's a socialist. So just remember that. When you're out there, remember what he is. And for those of you, I'm sure I don't even think I have one socialist listener, but I might. Just read some books. Look at what happened to nations that are run by socialists and communists and dictatorships. Just look at Venezuela. Look at what happened to Venezuela. It's still happening right now. People are starving. The economy has fallen apart. And it is not the fault of the United States. It's the fault of a terrible system that it breaks under strain. It always has. It always will. It will not work. Now I want to move really quickly because today we have such an incredible guest. We have Congressman Andy Biggs, one of my favorite guys. We have so much fun with him. I mean, I can laugh for hours with Congressman Biggs. He is, head of the Freedom Caucus. He's got a great personality. He's a real fighter out there for the American people. And one of the big issues that we're going to be talking about, and I think you're going to want to hear what he has to say, is actually the Fourth Amendment and what is going to happen with FISA renewal coming up. And I want you to be aware that there are three provisions right now under FISA. That's a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. And these are the courts. This is the secret court of the land that can basically get a warrant to spy on an American citizen without having anyone there to represent you. You don't even know you're being spied on. That's what happened to Carter Page. And by the way, with Carter Page, who was a volunteer for the Trump campaign in 2016, they basically fudged his application, meaning that they withheld important information that was given, the FBI did, that was given to them by the CIA, that Carter Page was cooperative, that he worked with the CIA. He informed the CIA on a number of occasions when he was in Russia, when he was dealing with the Russians, that he was basically an asset of ours, reporting on information. They didn't say that when they went to spy on him because they wanted to spy on the Trump campaign. And they also altered information in those documents. So I want you to think about that. This is our Fourth Amendment. This is about our Constitution. This is about our rights to not be subjected to unreasonable search and seizure. This isn't I'm going to throw by side. This isn't just about catching terrorist people. This is about who you are, who we are as a nation, and what's going to happen to us if we allow this to continue. Because basically, we have a system now that was allowed to be weaponized against us, against the American people, and against the administration. And if you think it's going to end here with President Trump, it's not. Because if we don't fix it, if we don't actually fix this and make a change, we could see a far different future for our nation than we ever could expect. This is a young nation. We have to protect the foundation of our country. We have to protect those documents that our founding fathers and that our men and women have died for, fighting for, have spilled blood for. We can't just let that go. And it doesn't matter if it's Attorney General William Barr or if it's John Durham. By the way, I would love to know what's happening with that investigation. And again, I have faith in our Department of Justice, and I have faith that William Barr is going to do the right thing and that John Durham is going to do the right thing. But guess what? I am not putting all my eggs in one basket. I am going to hold them accountable. And you should too. Because if people are not indicted here, if no one's indicted, then what does this mean? Is it all back to normal? Like just sweep it under the rug and we all just walk away from this? If we just renew FISA on March 15th, when that sunset clause comes up and we don't fight, either to, one, abolish the FISA court, or two, to reform it extensively, then what are we saying? We're saying, guess what? Hi, welcome to the two-tier justice system. You will be treated differently than senior level officials of the United States government. We're going to be no different than anyone else. So I want you to think about that. And Congressman Biggs has a lot to say on that. He also has a lot to say about the U.S.-Mexico border. He was just there visiting the border and has so much to report on. He was up in a Black Hawk helicopter. He's going to be talking to you about that, what he's seeing, what he's hearing from the actual Border Patrol agents and Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents that are on the front lines. and what that means to us. And also, we're going to touch on coronavirus, whether or not this border, situation needs to be, should we shut it down altogether? Should we shut off our ports of entry? Is that going too far? What do we need to do to protect our country from possibly seeing a wider spread of coronavirus here in the United States? The Trump administration has done an incredible job. President Trump has done an incredible job of mitigating the spread of this virus here. Now, remember, we're still in the early stages and we don't know a lot about this virus, but we do know they've accelerated basically with the CDC to try to get a vaccine developed as soon as possible. We're seeing what's happening in Italy now. We see what's happened in Iran with senior Iranian officials who have now, one of them who has just passed away from coronavirus, and we're seeing it spread across the globe. So we've got to remain cautious, but we can't be over-exaggerated about this, right? We have to use common sense here. And we have to figure out what is the best way to mitigate this. How do we best protect our citizens? And I think that the Trump administration is now on the right path to doing that. And President Trump has been very vocal about that. Also, last but not least, Afghanistan. And I don't want to leave that out. I know I've spoken to you a lot on other podcasts about what's happening in Afghanistan, what we need to do. There is right now this historic peace deal in the works with the Taliban. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't trust the Taliban as far as I can throw them, and I really can't throw very well at all anyways. So I don't trust them at all. I just don't. But it doesn't mean that we can't find some common ground and get out of Afghanistan, because this is the longest war. We're never going to do any nation building there. We're going to have to work with our Afghan partners, but we can't put our young men and women on the front lines anymore of a war that does not have any direct national security interest to the United States. We have done our job there. I think the best thing that we can hope for is, I'm not saying walk away altogether. I'm saying that even if we leave Afghanistan, we monitor the situation there. We monitor what's happening in Pakistan. We can have quick reaction forces, to target terrorists if they so choose to go back to Afghanistan to find safe harbor. And I know that some of them are there right now. If they start to build up training camps, if Al-Qaeda or Islamic State or if the Taliban allows them to do this, we can send strike forces in there along with our Afghan partners, and we can eliminate them and get them out. That's what we should be doing. But putting large battalions on the ground and fighting this war as we have been for the last 20 years, I think that's over with. I think the president is going to keep his promise. I think he's going to bring our troops home, and he's going to find a way to do it. It's not going to be easy. This is going to be a slow process. It's going to have a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. Remember, the Taliban, don't trust them. So there could be a strike tomorrow. The Taliban has just said that they won't be targeting U.S., but because Afghanistan isn't willing to give up all the prisoners that they want, it's like open season again with the Taliban, targeting the Afghan government. Look, we're going to be there to support our Afghan partners, but we need to find a resolution, and we need to get out of Afghanistan. And last but not least, and I know I said that just before I talked about Afghanistan, but now I'll be talking about Congressman Biggs. You're going to love this interview. He is phenomenal. He's the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, spends a lot of time on the border and in our country fighting for our rights, particularly against this unreasonable search and seizure with the FISA courts. And I want to hear everything he has to say, and so will you. So I look forward to having him on the show. I've got Congressman Biggs with me. I'm so thrilled to have you here. We actually were having so much fun that we ate up, I think, at least 10 minutes of our time, didn't we, Congressman?
Yes, we did. We sure did.
We want to get to the news, so we are going to bring that to you. But I got to tell you, he's probably one of the most important and influential congressional members in the House on the Republican side, and head of the Freedom Caucus, and does so much incredible work. I just want to thank you for taking a little bit of your time to come in studio here at Radio America with me today. And I want to start out with something that maybe you haven't talked a lot about yet, and that is the new U.S. peace deal with the Taliban and where it is going. I'm going to play a clip for you really quickly of President Trump and what he had to say. I mean, this is America's longest war. It's affected so many of our lives, mine in particular. My husband was wounded in 2011, so there's a lot of connection there for me, and I actually covered the war for quite a bit of time. I mean, a long period of time in my career. So I want to play this clip of President Trump.
But in exchange for the Taliban's action against al-Qaeda and other terrorists who could threaten us, we're prepared to begin those force withdrawals. And if the Taliban and the Afghan government live up to their commitments, and they may or they may not, but I think we have a lot of reason why they will. I think they will. That means that the longest war in American history by far, it's not even close, will be over.
What do you get from that? How do you feel about what's happening right now? And do you think that a peace deal is attainable?
Yeah, I'm actually very excited by that. I mean, look, President Trump campaigned on ending these endless wars. And, I've had people to say, but he's negotiating with the Taliban. Yeah, he's negotiating with the Taliban, who hasn't proven to be trustworthy. But you know what? You got to negotiate with people who can actually make the peace, and Taliban can make and enforce a peace there. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great thing. We're going to monitor it. Wouldn't it be great to bring home thousands of troops? Great stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, it took a lot for me to wrap my head around it. Like, how do we trust them? How do we know that they're actually going to abide by this treaty, right? And right now, there's obviously a lot of tension. Today, we realized that the Afghan government isn't ready to give up all of the prisoners that they have, but the U.S. is working diligently. I've spoken to people who say that they believe this peace process is going to move forward and that there's a really good chance that there will be a ceasefire at some point in time. We know that the Taliban will continue to target Afghan security forces. They made that clear. They said they will not be targeting directly U.S. forces right now. So I think that even though we have some bumpy, windy roads, there really has to be an end to this. Americans are tired. This is the longest war. And what is our national security interest now in the region, right?
Yeah, that is the point, is what's the national security interest. We had a hard time defining it once we had done the initial clean out of Afghanistan. But the reality is they are an unsettled country. They still remain tribalistic in so many ways.
Right.
They're very theocratic in so many ways as well. So you'll see these tribal cross cleavages with the various religious sects that are there. We can't really state. Nobody can tell you in
Right.
10 seconds or less, this is our national security interest. This is why we're there. Other than they might say stability in the region, but it hasn't really proven to be so, right? I mean,
That's right.
So let's get them home, our troops home, monitor the situation. Believe it or not, if we have to go back, we can.
That's right. And there's always that option for using a quick reaction force or using Delta or the SEALs or somebody, a special operations group to target terrorists if they reemerge in those parts of the world without having to put troops on the front lines. And we're not really utilizing them that way right now anyways. So, it was a long and hard fought battle. We did what we needed to do there. We got rid of Osama bin Laden. That was one thing that President Obama, under his administration, I thought was a highly successful operation. But now under President Trump, I think it's time to end this war. And that was one of the promises he made when he came into office. He wanted to end this war. But I'm going to move forward because I know you were recently at the U.S.-Mexico border. And as you know, there is a continuing war inside Mexico between the drug cartels, a highly volatile situation, still ongoing, decades long. A lot of dangerous issues that we're dealing with. I mean, I know we have economic issues with Mexico. They're our partner to the south. We want a strong relationship with our partners to the south, but we also have to deal with the reality that the U.S.-Mexico border has been for us, an impediment in so many ways because there was just so much porous borders, so many drugs flowing through, so many people flowing through that we could not monitor. So tell me what you saw while you were there.
Well, sir, this is the first time in probably 3 years that I didn't see an actual apprehension take place. First time in 3 years. But we did see the agents closing in on someone. They just happened to be on the other ravine, and we couldn't get over there to see. So we think that something was happening there. Look, we saw the new fencing that's going up in Lukeville. That's really important. It's 30-foot high fencing. I wish it was going faster. But we also saw literally probably 87 miles of border that has either no fencing at all or single strand or double strand cattle fencing, which is, anybody sitting in this room right here, we could get through that immediately. And so what you're seeing is we're down since May of last year from about 150,000 apprehensions to 30,000 last month or in January. The problem with that is that's great. It's a great slowdown, but the normal is about 8,000 to 10,000 a month under normal circumstances. We would prefer to have none. We'd prefer to have none. And so, I mean, it's been pretty wild. But we took Black Hawk helicopters that they're using on the Border Patrol. We took it along the fence. It's great.
Oh, there's nothing like being up in a Black Hawk. Yeah. I've done that before, but I've done that actually in the war zone. What was that like for you, being able to see the whole terrain and realize, this terrain is pretty rough. When I was in Arizona and along the border, I remember I was there one time at the hottest point in Yuma, Arizona, and I saw some people making their way across, and Border Patrol took them in. They were obviously very dehydrated, and I was thinking, holy cow. How did you guys make it there in this type of weather? The terrain is really vicious.
Yeah, it is, and it's hard to explain. But imagine some the most rugged ravines and cuts. We actually went back in some of these ravines that I hadn't been in something like that since I was a kid because they're so rough and rugged. In one area, our Black Hawk pilot told us a few years ago, they took off, and this goes from the desert floor to high mountains and really jagged cut mountains that none of us would be walking on. It takes a kind of a specialty permit to even be allowed to go there. Well, there's an 8.5-month pregnant woman that they had to pull off with a Black Hawk helicopter. They sent a hoist down. They sent their special ops team down, helped her up, took her out, and then of course we care for her.
Right,
and
we do.
And that's what people don't remember or don't understand. Our about a third to half of our Border Patrol are trained EMT types, paramedic types, and so what they do is they're providing this relief, healthcare relief to these people who are coming across dehydrated. They don't have clothes that they should have. They're coming across with a jug of water that's about a gallon, and they don't have shoes that are good, and they're not prepared for this horrifically difficult hike that they're going. They can take 4 days to go from the Nogales border that you've seen.
That's right.
Up to the drop-off point or the pickup point about 30 miles south of Phoenix, where they're going to be distributed, ferried, and indentured all over this country.
That's where I was going to go with this, because I think that's the part that most Americans really don't understand, is the fact that they already are indentured when they give those first payments to the cartels, to the human traffickers, associated with the major drug cartels that are operating in those regions, either Sinaloa cartel, Juarez cartel, Tijuana cartel. I remember when it used to be Arellano Felix in San Diego, Vincente, the VCF cartel in Juarez. So they're indentured. Our guys are the first Border Patrol, our law enforcement officials are the first line of defense along the border, especially Border Patrol. But I know that a lot of law enforcement officers in Arizona come across people that, come into our country illegally. But the worst part is that they are indentured, even when they come into the United States. That's why this is so unacceptable. It's so unacceptable because it puts people's lives in danger and children's lives in danger. And by the way, it puts American lives in danger because when we don't know who's crossing, that means anybody could have come in. We just have no idea who's in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we have rules that prevent us actually from doing biometrics under certain age, for instance. And so there's been a recycling of children to create fake family units to try to get released into the country. So that's been a huge problem. And we haven't had enough data going back and forth between even ports of entry or detention facilities. And this has just been a massive problem. We discovered at the Yuma facility, they've discovered that there was a place that people were being released to on the East Coast in South Carolina where just in an Excel spreadsheet, that's what our agent was looking at, and he found literally that we were sending 40 and 50 and 60 people to the exact address as if that's where their sponsors, like Uncle, Joe is there. But the reality is it was false. It was run by a cartel. And so they actually cracked that ring. And when they did, they found 2 kids who were being recycled. Those 2 kids were being taken care of by a 10, 11-year-old child who was responsible for them. They'd take them out of the place one hour a week. And then all those other people were indentured because they had to give their money to the cartel dude there. And it was like $3.5 million over a year and a half. And what happened is because this agent was intrepid enough, creative enough, and found this, basically they shut that ring down. I've asked officials, and this is, I'll let them speak for themselves, but I've said how many more rings like there in the United States? They said we figure at least 1,000.
I believe it. I've talked to ICE officials who've told me they've seen rings in New York City. Yeah. They've also seen rings of basically women that are indentured into prostitution, where they'll see the same women coming in. And this is not just from Mexico and Central America. These are women coming from as far away as China, right, going to the exact same home in the exact same city with the exact same uncle. 15, 20 women, in a summer going to the exact same address. And they know that cannot be a legitimate relative, right? But then investigating, giving them the tools to do their job is so difficult when you have Democrats and other people basically trying to stop ICE and Border Patrol from doing their work. Why do you think they allow this to perpetuate, this type of horrible behavior? We know it's wrong. We know what's happening across the border. You and I have both seen it. So why do you think the Democrats and others try to play on the heartstrings instead of telling the truth about this?
Well, I think that there's a couple of reasons, not the least of which is they know that demographically they need voters, and they hope this will be a voting base. But I mean, if you think about it, it is the logical conclusion when you have an open border policy. The logical conclusion ultimately is, well, if we're open borders here, then we should be open borders everywhere in the United States, and that means that we don't cooperate with the federal officials who are trying to enforce the federal law, just like we don't on the border. It's a weird logic. It's a pretzel logic, but I think it's the logical conclusion. It's just not the moral conclusion. It's not the legal conclusion, and it's not the just conclusion. And so you get these horrific acts that are being perpetrated on Americans by criminally violent, illegal aliens that have been released into their communities.
I mean, it's almost like the Democrats and the people who support these open border policies are perpetuating those acts on their own citizens. Right? Exactly
right.
And now there's a new decision by the Ninth Circuit Court. It basically suspended its own order that blocked the Remain in Mexico policy. What do you think's going on here? Are they legislating from the bench? I mean, is this again the Ninth Circuit doing what they want?
Well, the Ninth Circuit always legislates from the bench. And so, I mean, let's just be honest. The good news is that President Trump has now appointed about half of those Ninth Circuit judges. But here's the way to think of that. The Ninth Circuit is 3 times as big as the nearest circuit in size. We run from and I'm in the Ninth Circuit, Arizona's in the Ninth Circuit, and it goes from the equator to the Arctic Circle. And you've got, with 30 judges, we can't get a normal review panel. So they get to choose out of those 30 or so judges they have there to give this review panel. So you can stack the chief judge of the Ninth Circuit could basically stack that review panel, whereas anywhere else an en banc panel or a review panel is going to be every judge in that circuit. Ours is simply too big to do that. So that's part of the reason you get this craziness, and that's why I'm a big believer, just for the sake of my home state, we want out. We say we surrender, just let us out of the Ninth Circuit.
Where would you go? Would you create?
We'll create a new one.
Create a new circuit.
I have legislation to create a new one, That
actually isn't a bad idea. What do you think the reality of that would be?
Well, we actually had a hearing on it 2 years ago. The problem is, if you don't live on the coast of California, you want to be in this new circuit, right?
Right.
And then you're splitting a state, which is also problematic as well. So I've told them, I said, well, maybe we'll just bring you guys into Nevada and Arizona as parts of our state, and let's have a new state of very thin California on the West Coast.
I'm all for that. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think California would be all for that.
California would be all for that too.
You would
Maybe,
think.
yeah, you would think so. You would think so, Adam. I mean, who knows? I want to talk a little bit more about the border because the president has talked about shutting down the border as a way to also mitigate any potential coronavirus acceleration in infections in the United States. We've seen what's happened in Italy, skyrocketing numbers. In Iran now, we see that we can't even trust those numbers. And we see a senior level officials in Iran, one who has passed away, a senior advisor to Khamenei, who has passed away with the coronavirus. So what do you think about that? How do you feel about the president's making that an option and shutting it down just until we can figure out what's going on here?
Well, I've got some mixed emotions on this, but I will just tell you this: along the border, and you know this, for every one that we apprehend that we know of, there's at least one that is a getaway. And in some figures, they're telling us maybe as high as 10 for every one. And if that's the case, then there really is no tracking. You really have no idea how many people are getting in. And they're coming from literally, I think the number of countries so far this year we've apprehended is almost 100. It's
right.
Between 80 and 100, somewhere in that.
So we also know we have special interest aliens in there and people from all over the world that could have been exposed.
Right. And then just in the Yuma port of entry, you're going to have 8,000 to 12,000 people crossing every day. We're not giving every one of them a health test. We're not taking their temperature. We're not seeing how they've been feeling. And even those people that we apprehend, we're not giving them a full health screen. We give them a health screen, but it's not as extensive as if you and I were to go in and get a doc and they would really give us a full screen. So if you keep your border open, let's say you close your ports of entry, these people are just going to it's like a balloon. They're going to go between ports of entry like many of them do now. We're not going to get all of them. So it's important to keep that in perspective. The other thing I think that's important to keep in perspective is the good job that has been done by this administration. They've created these travel bans, and they've slowed down the people coming in. They're prepared, I think, to try to deal with any potential crisis. I mean, but look what we have with the flu every year. 20 to 40 million people get the flu every year. 15 to 30, sometimes as high as 40,000 people a year succumb to because of complications dealing with the flu. I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying we should keep things in perspective and context. And I would tell you that we have got to secure the border. And you put a fence up, we have a far better chance of interdicting people coming into this border and checking them out. And so, and the Democrats don't want a fence. They don't want anything on the border. And
I have to agree with you on that because, look, if anything turns into, if they actually say this is a pandemic, right, and they actually, there's not really a way to mitigate that other than doing your best to secure your ports of entry, check people that are flying, some travel bans. I mean, there's really nothing that one person or even one nation can do because we are such a global world and people are flying back and forth. And we've seen that in the past. And you're right. I think there's an alarmist issue here. People are becoming very overly alarmed at something that I think right now is, for the most part, in the United States at least, under control. And the administration is moving as quickly as possible. And I know the president's trying to push for a vaccine. But I want to move on really quickly because I know our listeners want to hear you talk about what's happening with all of the investigations with John Durham, William Barr, what we're dealing with FISA right now, especially FISA renewal coming up. It sunsets March 15th. This is a time where people can really fight in Congress for FISA reform. What do you think needs to happen? Do you believe that the FISA court should be abolished, or do you think there's a chance for reform?
Well, I believe the FISA court should be abolished. And let's just face it. My position is real simple. The Constitution protects the United States citizen from unlawful searches and seizures, and the FISA court is a secret court that doesn't have the same probable cause standard that we have in an Article III court established by the Constitution. So that's enormously a powerful secret tool that, oddly enough, has been used to spy on President Trump, Carter Page, President Trump's associates, and you just look at it and you say, well, there's a huge problem here. And how about the business records exception that they want? 3 million inappropriate searches were done on business records just in 2017. So this is a huge issue. I'll be honest with you. I don't care if we're spying. I mean, obviously we don't want to precipitate an international conflict, but if you want to spy on foreigners, people who are not of the United States, have at it. But the citizens, people who are here legally, we've granted them. We respect and understand these are God-given rights, and you're usurping them with a secret court. So I mean, there's a lot of us in Congress concerned about this, and where it's going to go is last week you saw the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Nadler. Yes, it's the same Chairman Nadler.
You saw that,
yeah,
Nadler.
And what Nadler did is he couldn't get his votes on his version of a FISA reform because it was cosmetic. And so people across the aisle agree with us, and this is a bipartisan issue because we recognize these are civil rights. That's the way that the left would put it. I call them basic American rights.
That's right, because this deals with our Fourth Amendment and shredding of the Fourth Amendment. And I don't understand right now. I see a lot of Republicans backing away from what they had originally said. You're one of the few that are saying, no, look, abolish the court. Let's find another way around this because we now know that it was weaponized. Even Rosemary Collyer said, we've got to go back and look at all of these cases. And she was with the FISA court. Now that we know we've been lied to, that documents were altered, that basically exculpatory information was left out of these documents so that they could spy on Carter Page. And we now know that over 99% of all of the FISA applications that went through the court were approved. Yeah. So what happens if they let this go? What happens if William Barr and John Durham don't indict, if everything goes back to the way it was? Are you afraid of what that means?
Yeah, I can't tell you how concerned I am. I mean, I think that Andrew McCabe was not indicted sends a signal that we're going to see status quo ante. And if it's status quo ante, the impeachment, that means that nothing's going to change. That means that today, President Trump and his administration can be spied on by the intelligence agencies of the United States government. And if they can spy on the president, they can spy on Sara Carter, they can spy on anybody else in this country with virtual impunity. How is that consistent with the American ideal?
How does that make us any different than any other nation?
It doesn't.
Wow.
It doesn't.
Congressman Andy Biggs, thank you so much for being with me today. I can't tell you how much it means to me as well as to the listeners out there, to you. I know you got a lot from this. We're going to bring you back because I think we need to talk about this after March 15th and find out what happened and find out who in Congress is really going to stand by the American people and do the right thing here and not cave into this bureaucracy. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
This is how serious this situation is in the United States. When you think about our essential rights and freedoms, and Congressman Andy Biggs is saying abolish the FISA court. It's not worth it. It's not worth trampling all over our rights, our Constitution. It's just not worth it. And it's not there yet. It's not there yet. One of the things that we have to think about, and I mean, listen, I'm talking to you directly. What are you willing to sacrifice? Are you willing to give up those essential freedoms with the hope that maybe we actually break up a terrorist ring? I mean, I've talked to a lot of people who've worked in the FBI, who work in the intelligence community, and what they've told me is that isn't the way they catch these bad guys. The tools are there. We need to have some tools. We need to be able to monitor overseas threats, but we cannot abuse this system. We see just a small little bit of what happened because of an investigation that lasted over 3.5 years, nearly 4 years. And because of that, we now have shed light on what happened to our system and how the system was weaponized against a political opponent. I just want you to think about that. I know this is a tough issue. I want our law enforcement and intelligence community, that apparatus, to have the tools necessary to be able to do their job. But is it worth the sacrifice? And even if we got rid of the FISA court, even if it was abolished, that doesn't mean they won't have the tools necessary to monitor overseas threats. That doesn't mean they won't have the tools necessary to monitor threats that are emanating here in the United States. It might be a little bit tougher, or maybe it won't be as tough at all. We just don't know because we don't have anybody objective outside to tell us how good it is actually working. And I think we need that before we make any decisions. And I'm going to have to agree with Congressman Biggs on this one. Also, want to have some fun here because the gaffe that I played earlier of Joe Biden wasn't the only gaffe. Apparently, you just can't stop making gaffes. And you know what? I'm not even really sure if this is a gaffe or not, but I want you to hear it.
By the way, how many of you did really well with that $1.9 trillion tax cut that increased? Really in good shape, right? Really changed your. Well, you did. Well, that's good. I'm glad to see you're doing well already, and I'm good. But guess what? If you elect me, you're not going to have your taxes are going to be raised, not cut. If you benefit from that.
What? If you elect me, your taxes are going to be raised, not cut. Wow, I'm running to the polls right now. I can't wait to vote. I can't wait to see my taxes raised any more than they already are. What kind of craziness is this? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I assume that your taxes will be raised. So if you vote for Joe Biden, you definitely will up your odds on having a lot more taxes. Do you think it was a gaffe, Adam?
It's just a new formed way of using transparency to get elected through the voters.
He's just being as transparent as possible. I think that's what we're doing here now. He's being as transparent as possible. One of the things I wanted to do with you, though, is go over we had so many comments about Bernie's summer camp. I don't know if you all remember this, but Bernie admitted that his third home was a summer camp.
I do have a summer camp.
He has a summer camp. He has a summer camp.
Where is your home?
I don't have a summer camp. Bernie has a summer camp. But everybody came up with all kinds of great ideas, right, Adam? I mean, about what kind of summer camp they would have if we had a Bernie summer camp.
Yeah, this was pretty fun. So some of our YouTube followers, and if you want to watch the show instead of just listen, just head over to YouTube and check out the Sara Carter Show.
That's right.
Some people really having fun with this one, saying that summer camp would be like California and it's top to bottom rigged elections.
Nice. I like that.
MD Whitting writes he should give his summer camp to the government. They'll manage it better.
OMD. No. Well, maybe they'd have 2 gulags instead of 1.
So if you want to write into us, we do manage the comments. It's something that's a lot of fun for all of us. I put together the Instagrams along with Sarah and Jenny, and we all look at it together. So we love your comments. Keep them coming. We'll try to get you guys on the air.
Yeah, it's great listening, and reading all these comments coming in from readers. I'm really excited about it. Listen, I love having you on the show. It's so great to be a part of your life. Follow me at Sara Carter DC. That's again, Sara Carter DC on Twitter. You can read all the latest stories at SaraACarter.com. Once again, SaraACarter.com. And please don't forget to rate our podcast. You could do that on Apple, Spotify, whatever you listen to, The Sara Carter Show. You can rate us and tell us what you think about the show. Also, send in your ideas. Email me. Put them out there on Twitter. I will look into it and I will investigate. Again, this is the Sara Carter Show, and we are taking the story back, America. Thank you so much for being with us today.